Yeah,
Hmm.
I think I've known for a while, but I think I finally came to terms with the fact that I just don't enjoy playing Elden Ring.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm kind of feeling the same way.
Aw.
I'm more just like trying to check things out and see what's happening.
Mm.
Everything I read says it gets better as it goes on, but that's not really like
Listen, because
great.
Kyle and I have been talking about this a lot, and like, everything Kyle has said that is bad about Elden Ring, I agree is a thing about Elden Ring. And it just so happens that I love every inch of this game. That doesn't mean it is a good game for everyone. It is a very popular game. So no, I don't. I think the faults, the things that are grating on people, make sense, and I don't. Yeah, that this may just not be a game you enjoy. That is
Yeah.
simply possible.
It just it's been a long time since I've sunk 80 hours into a game I don't like playing.
Mm.
I'm just looking at my Steam page right now. I'm like, I definitely gave this game a fair shot.
I'm actually kind of curious, Kyle, about your opinions on the open worldness of the game. I saw your little Twitter thread.
Mm.
Um, it's something
Thread. That was
interesting.
sorry.
Hmm?
That was a very polite word for what I did on Twitter today. Thank you.
I saw your Twitter thread. Yeah.
Did you wreck it? I didn't see your
I-
Twitter thing.
Yeah, no, I did like a 10 tweet long rant. Because I couldn't.
It was
I
more
couldn't
like 5 or 6.
Whatever. But go. Actual. What were you saying before I?
Oh,
Bullshit?
just like thinking about the concept of what makes an open world game and what is enjoyable about an open world experience. Because I remember I was talking to Adam at one point about whether or not it's possible to do open world in like a 2D top down RPG. And I kind of felt like it wasn't. It might, maybe it technically is, but I feel like such a vital component is kind of like you said, to look off into the distance and see a weird thing and be like, what's that?
You know,
And you just go there.
I would argue that original #1 Legend of Zelda on the NES absolutely was that. And the reason why is because there was a 8-bit digital representation of, oh shit, I can go over there, in the form of, here is just a gray rectangle and a flashing dot that shows where you are. And you quickly realized, oh, I could go all the way to this corner. I could go all the way to that corner. And so it was a very early and rudimentary take on it, but it was a world that you could explore, and you could sequence break, and you could go wherever you wanted. And like I think Jeff and I were talking about this a couple months ago, where it's like Zelda was the first at something. We weren't really sure like what it was. It was the first at, but I think Zelda 1 was that, and I would argue that most of the Zeldas after it, until it was actually an open world game again, until it was 3D again, like, weren't that.
I agree. I'd say that perhaps more than other genres, 3D lends itself like has more tools that can make an open world experience more satisfying. It's like strategy games, like the difference between 3D and 2D is going to be like aesthetic at best, but with something like an open world game, you being in 3D gives you more tools to show the vastness and show like the places you can explore.
Yeah, it's really only like modern 3D too, where you can actually have long draw distances and see things. Like,
Yeah.
on the N64, these games wouldn't work because you can't see very far.
Well, and then you get to Dark Souls 1, which is like, I think like Kyle, if I can try, I'm gonna try and say what you said to me and then hand it to you to like clarify that like the thing that you liked about the other FromSoft games that you don't like about this is that keeping it concise and tight meant that you can look at the place and go there in a much more tangible, refined, distilled way. Whereas here in Elden Ring, you can look over there and go there, but it's so huge and so free form that that it dilutes it. Kyle, is that what you were saying?
That's pretty much the case. Like I look, and I thought this before Elden Ring. I just didn't really have the right avenue to talk about it. Is that like Dark Souls? You know, it's some more than others, but like the FromSoft games up until this point have been, in my opinion, open world games done right. Because people are always talking about like, oh, you know, like this open world thing's so cool, but you know, there's these problems. You know, the maps become empty. Just the size requires you to reuse assets a lot, and it becomes kind of pedantic. And I think Dark Souls, Dark Souls 1 is probably the best example because I think its level design is a masterpiece. It's I every time I try and say Dark Souls is a perfect game, I remember the horrible UX experience going into the first time, and I can't quite say that, but I think its level design its world design is one of the best things ever.
Yeah.
You know what?
Go ahead.
You know what a good open world game? Sorry. I say this, but I'm really just coming at it from a discovery standpoint. But I think what makes it good is the feeling you get when you look at one of those like fantasy maps that's drawn really well. Because there's bad fantasy maps where, sorry, maybe I shouldn't say bad, but like imagine a fantasy map that reused assets, right? Where you're like, oh, look, a river. Oh, look, another river. And you feel like they just kind of put rivers there because they felt like a river should be there. It's a very boring river. And oh, look, a forest and another forest and a mountain range. And then there's the edge of the land. And it just kind of feels unimaginative. But with a good fantasy map, you kind of embellish everything a little bit. You give everything an interesting name. And you go, oh, these aren't just the woods. You know, these are the golden woods. And you're like, oh, why are they golden? And those trees look kind of funny too. There's something special about these woods. You know, and with the river, it's not just a regular river, it's a weirdly shaped river, and maybe it has some kind of spooky name for it, you know?
Yeah.
Like if you go down like the Oregon coast, they'll have these like coves that are called things like the Devil's Punch Bowl. And you're like, what the fuck is the Devil's Punch Bowl?
That was Captain Vancouver's fault. He was a grumpy man. He's the one that named shit like Disappointment Bluff and Deception Pass.
Well, the Devil's Punch Bowl is kind of a cool area because the waves hit and they form almost like a whirlpool. And the thing is that they actually carved out the rock mass in a weird way where they kind of float underneath the rocks and like swirl around and punch it up underneath, basically. And so sometimes you'll have water shooting out through holes in the rocks. Cool. So it's kind of a wild area. But that's kind of the thing is like, you design cool stuff to find, you know?
So, like, apart from Elden... Because I honestly do think Elden Ring does that very well. But I know something that does it even better, and it's a game I can't stand. World of Warcraft. Every zone had a distinct feel to it. Almost to the point of being color-coded. And so you go from the border of one zone to another zone, and you feel like a different place. And I think it's something that Skyrim did it kind of good in a weirdly subtle way, but also kind of bad. Because it's like everything kind of just feels like Skyrim all over, but then you get to a place that's just a little bit unique, and the fact that it's such a gray world actually lends itself to, oh my god, there's just a bit of color here and it's exploding.
So
go ahead.
Well, one thing I want to say about Skyrim is that I do kind of like that it was subtle touches where it's like, okay, you start heading to the Reach, I think. No, is it the Reach? It's where Riften is. And you just notice the trees are a different species.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, these are like birch trees or something, you know? And you get to the town and it's, you know, it's a Thieves Guild town and it feels fun. It feels like being on a playground when you're a kid where you're like, haha, 2 levels and I can go down to the waterway.
Yeah.
Door down here, yeah. Whereas if you go to like Marthal, it's like, oh, this is like an old dwarven city and the humans just kind of took it over and started putting like their houses here. And so everything kind of feels like baseline Skyrim plus extra flavor. Or in some cases, you just have like baseline Skyrim. Or in the cases of like Winterhold, you just have Skyrim on steroids.
So, I've been thinking about like why even like there's something about the I'm using the colloquial term open world, but I think it's kind of not necessarily
genre titles are going to get all messed up
Yeah.
in this conversation no matter what, so let's just embrace it.
So like Breath of the Wild and Skyrim are two open world games that I really like, and I do realize something about them that is different than Elden Ring, and that is in both of those the star of the show is always that emptiness. It like there's something very atmospheric about just riding around your horse in Breath of the Wild that is definitely meant to be the experience. Whereas Elden Ring has these wonderfully crafted, explorable zones, but they're just spread out through these like acres and acres of nothing and reused assets.
I see.
And
That's interesting.
And so every time, like, I get to one of these areas and I'm exploring, I'm having a great time, and I'm like going through it, and I'm finding these cool paths to go through, and it's like I'm playing Dark Souls again. And then the reward for getting through all of that is another fucking empty open world place where there's an Everjail to get to and an Erd tree to get to, and you need to find the map, aka the like the radio tower with fewer steps.
I'm going to reiterate that I love every inch of Elden Ring, but I'm going to abstain from defending it for this conversation.
I want to. Thank you. It's this is all stuff that's been building up, but I don't want to shit on this thing people are enjoying, and
I'm comfortable in this.
I'm glad.
I mean, like FromSoft games have always been that sort of thing that like the people that love them just have to accept that not everyone's going to like this.
Yeah.
And Elden Ring is an extreme case of that, where it's not a typical FromSoft game, and it does a lot of FromSoft things, but it's also FromSoft's take on this other thing that already existed. And in some ways they've reimagined it and done some really innovative things with it, and in other ways it's their first one and they've made some derpy mistakes. And yeah, without like I've already gone on like on at least 3 or 4 of streams about how much I love the game and all the cool things in it. But yeah, it's as is always the case with a FromSoft game, it ain't for everyone, turns out.
One thing I thought that was interesting you said, Kyle, was that the emptiness was supposed to be part of the feature. I actually remember hearing someone talk about that in basically on a YouTube channel for writing, actually. It was a guy who liked to focus on world building for writing specifically, and he's had, I think, a couple videos that he's done, video essays, where he's focused on fallen civilizations and abandoned places. And, you know, one of the things he kind of touches on is this idea, oftentimes in video games, of like, hey, here's a place, you know, and there's meaning to it, and maybe people used to be here, and it's beautiful, but it's just kind of empty now, but it's not empty in a boring way. And I actually kind of like that too. I do resonate with that feeling when it works really well. And I remember I was talking to some people about it way back last year when I was thinking about making a video game, because I was torn on whether or not I would want to have party members that you could collect in a game. Like, is that a thing that you would want the people to do? Because in a weird way, I felt like having companions along would actually kind of ruin the experience of like being by yourself in this big empty like naturescape.
I feel like no, it's fine. I one thing I really like about what FromSoft has done is like it feels like with each game they try and make a different dish out of the same ingredients. Like they have a. I think I started this metaphor with you, Jer, is that like it like they start with $100 steak, and like Dark Souls they make like a you know, just roast it really well and, you know, make a whole thing. And then they try something else. Okay, they take that same chunk of beef and make it into like the best hamburger you've ever had, or uh, I I don't know if this is really making sense, but point being that like I don't like the dish they made with the same ingredients with this one. And that is to say, like I can still taste the ingredient, the really really good ingredient in it, but yeah.
Because my big FromSoft disappointment was Sekiro. Really beautiful game, really cool, different take on their formula, really, really cool design, very different gameplay. I just stopped playing it. And I stopped playing it at one of the coolest moments in the game because I just didn't want to play it anymore. Not because I wasn't even frustrated. I didn't even not like it. I just stopped having fun playing the video game. Boredom is probably the closest where, like, because FromSoft games do take a lot of effort because they make them very challenging, and it just kind of like I just put the controllers down one day and just never turned the game back on, and the dumbest, weirdest thing about that was the point at the game where I stopped was one of my favorite bosses they've ever made. And I mean, like if they have a strength, it's designing a cool boss. And I was fighting the coolest boss in Sekiro, was the Guardian Ape. He was super, super cool, and I was having fun fighting him. And then I just didn't feel like turning the video game back on, and I can't. I don't know. And like and this is it. Like I could keep stammering and trying to find words for it, but I don't really know what it was about it. I can't articulate it about like what was it about that game that made me just all of a sudden stop caring about it. Dark Souls 2 did that as well, but I managed to get through the core game. I just like when that opened up the DLC, and I was like, nah, I'm good.
I have been thinking about this too because I think Sekiro is kind of the opposite take of Elden Ring, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So with Sekiro, I bounced off pretty hard and didn't think I'd come back to it, and then one day I just kind of like original Dark Souls. So one day I just came back and then chewed through it, and right now I'm playing through Elden Ring, and I'm just like, I'd rather be playing Sekiro.
Funny thing, Kyle. I actually like used my video game last night to just play to try and do a speed run of Dark Souls 1.
How'd it go?
I picked up one of my characters that was on New Game Plus. I got from I started right before the Bell Gargoyles, and I got past ONS.
Nice.
So and completely using every shortcut trick that I know in the game to just beeline through it. But yeah. That was fun. It felt good. Because the reason I was doing it is because I want to set up to finish up the playthrough. I want to set up a couple of alt games to have so I can do the second take on Sif and to show both endings. And so I want to get two characters in like right near the end of the game and up to Sif with the other situation. So I can just show all of that in the playthrough. So I'm just trying to get those done before that. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
But with Sekiro, it is... unlike all of their other games, it is focused less on exploration and customization, and much more focused on just the game and playing the game. And I mean that makes it a completely different take. Like in Sekiro, you are just you are a character, unlike all the other Soulsborne games. You are a specific person with a name, and you don't really customize your appearance. And you can attribute your abilities to a certain extent, but it's your all characters are going to be roughly the same. I also think it's the most linear. Not to say it's entirely linear. There's a couple of different paths you can progress down. But unlike pretty much any other game where you can... Sure, there's some, like... linchpin bosses you need to fight through to continue to the next chunk where you have more versatility. Sekiro is one where like there is a certain progression you have to do. I was like looking it up because it's one of those things I disagree with. Is like talking with people about how other Soulsborne games are linear and they're not at all, and that's why I like them. That's why I call them open world games, because like Bloodborne, there's only of the 42 bosses in that game, like you only need to fight like 7 of them. Everything else is stuff you find exploring, and it's designed in such a way that you're likely to run into way more than the bosses you need to fight. But Sekiro is a lot more like path in that way, and I like that because I think they really honed in on the boss fights and the encounters and the controls, and they made that linear experience. And I don't get the same exploration feeling that I like in Dark Souls games, but all in all, I think it's like a funner game. Meanwhile, like Elden Ring, like there's those, like I said, there's those parts that I like in there. It just feels like they're stitched between a lot of nothing. I also like one thing that has been becoming really frustrating me the more I get is that like no boss is sacred. I swear they reuse every boss. Parentheses, yes, even that one that you think they won't. They will.
Like you're saying in the game or from past games?
No, in this game. Like I have run into a character that was named slightly different. That was just the same boss fight again.
Okay.
Huh.
And I thought
gotten far enough for that yet.
Yeah. I really thought that if anything was sacred, like that type of fight would have been, but it wasn't. And that made me really mad.
Kyle,
Was it like a cinematic one? Like where it opens up with a cutscene?
I want to hear what Jared said.
I'm just wondering how much of a is it one that you know I've met?
I know you've met the first one.
Is it a horse?
No.
Okay. Because there's a horse that, like, was so cool, I want to fight him again. I want to fight his dad and his granddad. So I'm hoping they reuse that one.
They also reuse that one. That's not what I'm talking about.
Okay. Can you actually just in our in one of the Discords, you just tell me which one it was, because I'm actually curious. Also, hi Squirrel Heart, hi Shiny Zubats.
Hi guys. I put it in our chat.
You're fucking kidding me.
I am not.
You're fucking kidding me. That makes no fucking sense.
Yep.
That makes no fucking sense. No wonder you're so pissed off.
Yeah. I really thought if anything was sacred, it'd be that. But it wasn't. And so now I'm really just expecting anything.
Because, I mean, reusing bosses isn't that unusual. They did that with the Asylum Demon. Mm-hmm. Stray, Asylum, and then Fire Sage.
And it being done
basically the same boss.
Yeah, it being done, like, having a couple bosses reused is one thing, but I swear, like, every boss is reused at least once. It feels like I can't confirm literally every boss, but it feels like every boss. And many bosses are repeated half a dozen times. It was like
because like the little dungeon bosses, that doesn't bother me, but that one that you just told me about makes no fucking sense. Yeah. That's rude.
Yeah. And it.
That's disappointing.
With me already having this problem with the game, like running into that was just.
that character has reasons for being exactly the way they are. And if you did that again, if another person, if another, it would be different. It would have to inherently be different. You wouldn't have exactly that again if this story made any sense. Why would that character be exactly the same ever else in the world? Because of what they are. Oh my god, that is a blow. That is a disappointment.
So, yeah. And so that's why I'm frustrated with this game.
You mighta convinced me. That's because nothing. I'm not feeling anything about, like, from me and my experience with the game. Like, I guess the most negative thing is, like, it's a little bit of a slog to explore. I think, like, the exploring is really fun. I think it's really interesting. Finding stuff is really cool. I can't fucking believe what you just told me.
Yeah.
That makes no fucking sense. Hey, oh no, too many people are still playing. I can't just spoil it and talk about it. Damn.
Yeah.
No, I can't. Oh boy, do I want to though. Let's talk about it on Thursday.
Yeah, and I don't want to like my goal is not to have people like not enjoy this game. Like I wish I was. It just keeps finding ways that like get under my skin.
I would not fight it. If you are not having fun, you're not having fun, and that is perfectly fine. You are allowed to have a negative opinion of something that is popular.
I have pretty much a path to the end of the game. I think I'm going to finish just cause I can.
Mm-hmm.
But I it's gonna be the first one I just don't really come back to. Which is a shame because like there's other builds I'd want to play. There's like cool weapons. There's stuff I want to do. I just the rest of it I just don't want to bother with.
Speaking of builds,
yeah,
what should I put points into?
That's a good goddamn